Greetings, Fiendish Films Fans. This is Mike Fitzgerald with the Fiends update for January MMX. Now you might be wondering what I mean by MMX. Well, I've got a note here. It's actually a memo from Victor Joyet. There's been a lot of debate going on YouTube about whether we should refer to this calendar year as 2010 or 2010. Victor thinks it's all nonsense, so instead of calling it either, we're just going to refer to it as MMX. Now, those of you who didn't flunk out of the 3rd grade will know that MMX is the Roman numeral for 2010. Each M stands for 1,000. You have 2 M's, that's 2,000. And X stands for 10. Fans of Jason X would know this. X is 10. Alright, and we've got some good reasons. I mean, there's no reason this shouldn't catch on. There's lots of cool things associated with MX or MMX. Alright, let me give you an example. Alright, MMX is also the International Air Transportation Association airport code for Sweden's Milano Airport. Now, if you're asking what makes Sweden's Milano Airport cool, I have 2 words for you. Swedish stewardesses. I mean, really. Through the place every day. MMX is cool. Other things, like the MMX technology inside the Intel Pentium processors. The Pentium processors with the MMX technology can provide a 10 to 20% performance boost over classic Pentium processors at the same frequency. In addition, the MMX technology versions of the processor double up on chip code and data caches to 16 kilobytes and feature improved branch prediction and enhanced pipeline and deep write buffers for improved performance. I have no idea what any of that means, but it sounds awesome, and I bet it really helps computers work better. Alright, okay, so that's not enough for you? Alright, MMX also stands for Mega Man X. Oh yeah, we're going old school. Got an old cartridge game here. MMX, or Mega Man X, the video game, was the first installment of the 2nd Mega Man franchise released by Capcom. It was released in the US in February of 1994 on the Super NES. Now, what made Mega Man X cool is it introduced many new features to the gameplay of the series. Mega Man X gained the ability to dash along the ground at any time. He could cling to walls. He could jump, and he could dash and jump at the same time, increasing his speed in the air. Yes, MMX is cool. And finally, MMX also refers to the Michelin-Morley experiment that was performed in 1887 by Albert Michelson and Edward Morley. The results of this experiment are generally considered to be the first strong evidence against the theory of the luminous ether. The experiment has been referred to as the kicking off point for the theoretical aspects of the scientific evolutions. See, what you need to understand is physics theories of the late 1917s postulated that just as water must have a medium to move through, because water moves through water in the waves moving the energy, and audible sound requires a medium to move through, such as air or water. They theorized that light also requires a medium that they referred to as the luminous ether. Because light can travel through a vacuum, it was assumed that the vacuum must contain a medium for the light. And because the speed of light is so great, designing an experiment to detect the presence and properties of this ether took considerable ingenuity. See, the Earth travels a tremendous distance in its orbit around the Sun at about a speed of 30 kilometers per second, or over 180,000 kilometers per hour. The sun itself is traveling around about the galactic center at even greater speeds, and there are other motions at higher levels of the structure of the universe. Since the Earth is in motion, it is expected that the flow of the ether across the Earth would produce a detectable, what they refer to as the ether wind. Although it would be possible in theory for the Earth's motion at the time to match that of the ether at one moment in time, it was not possible for the Earth to remain at rest with this aspect of the ether at all times, because of the variation in both the direction and speed. So they believe this medium, the ether wind, is often in contrast to the positioning of the Earth. So at any given point on the Earth's surface, the magnitude and direction of the wind would vary with the time of day and season. By analyzing the return speed of light in different directions at various different times, it is thought to be possible to measure the motion of the Earth relative to the ether. The expected difference in the measured speed of light was quite small, given that the velocity of the Earth and its orbit around the Sun was about 1/100th of 1% the speed of light. A number of physicists had attempted to make this measurement during the mid-1800s, but the accuracy demanded was simply too great for the existing experimental setups. See, Michelin had a solution to the problem of how to construct a device sufficiently accurate to detect the ether flow. The device he designed, later known as the interferometer, sent a single source of white light through a half silver mirror, where it was used to split into two beams of light traveling at right angles to each other. So even if one was traveling along the course of the ether wind, the other, being at a right angle, would be perpendicular to it. So that one would then, therefore, one of the two was going to be affected by it. And the idea that when it bounced, returned, it would be slowed down. After leaving the splitter, the beams traveled out to the ends of the long arms, where they were reflected back into the middle on small mirrors. They then recombine on the far side of the splitter in an eyepiece, producing a pattern of constructive and deconstructive interference based on the time spent in transit to the arms. See, one got back there later. So when you shine a flashlight on a wall, you get the one, solid pattern. This was going to suggest that the light being broken up into two pieces, you weren't going to get the two pieces combined back evenly, because the second piece was affected by the ether wind. If the Earth is traveling through an ether medium, the beam reflecting back and forth parallel to the flow of the ether would take longer than a beam reflecting perpendicular to the ether, because the time gained from traveling downwind is less than lost traveling upwind. The result would be a delay in one of the light beams that could be detected when the beams were recombined through the interference. Any slight change in the spent time would be observed as a shift in the positions of the interference fringes. Of course, after all this thought and preparation, the experiment became what might be called the most famous failed experiment to date. Instead of proving insight into the properties of the ether, which was later discarded, and there was no medium for light, Michelson's and Morley's article in the American Journal of Science reported the measurement to be as small as 1/40th of the expected displacement, but since the displacement is proportional to the square velocity, they concluded that the measured velocity was approximately 1/6 of the expected velocity of the Earth's motion in orbit, and certainly less than 1/4. Since the small velocity was measured, it was considered far too small to be used as evidence of the ether, and it was later to be said within the range of an experimental error that would allow the speed to be actually zero. Hence, that theory was proven wrong later by Einstein, but it was determined to be a complete failure. But what's still cool about that? They tried, alright? This is how science happens. People theorize things. Some of them are going to be right, some of them are going to be wrong. MMX experiment, definitely worth doing. And another reason to call this calendar year MMX. I'm Mike Fitzgerald, and this has been a Fiends Update. Thanks for watching.